Hello, and welcome to the Executive Edge podcast with Alex Mearns. This is my first podcast, which I'm pretty excited about and a little bit nervous, so please bear with me. If you're not familiar with me, I run Levitize, which is a holistic lifestyle and executive coaching studio in Singapore. And we specialize in working with senior execs in their 40s and 50s. We have a lot of interesting clients, and today I'm going to be having a conversation with one of them, Scott Treloar, who is a hedge fund manager in Singapore. So he runs his own business. He's in his 50s. He plays hockey for Singapore, an aspiring masters hockey player, and obviously is a family man and balances all these things. So I'm really interested to speak to him today to find out a little bit more about him, how he manages to do all this stuff, how he's successful, how he can sort of build the life of his dreams. So without further ado, I think we'll jump straight in.
Thank
Scott.
you, Alex. I'm glad to be part of your inaugural podcast.
Yeah, pleasure. Delighted to have you on.
I'm a 50s executive. Perfect.
Exactly. So let's start off with something fun. So obviously you live in Singapore. You're originally from Australia, but I believe when you were younger you were a ski instructor in Austria.
Yep.
So how did you get from Australia to Austria, and how did the skiing come about?
So, I mean, I was skiing in Australia. Australia has the snowy mountains. But after I did engineering, I then did what a lot of Australians do, which is you go and travel overseas. So I spent 3 years, 3 seasons in winter as a ski instructor in Austria. And between those periods, the summers, one was I was a chauffeur for the Qatari royal family for a summer.
Oh, wow.
That was very strange. And
was
another
it lucrative?
summer. Sorry? It was not lucrative. They don't pay. They
Okay.
don't pay very well.
Okay.
But you're basically just the driver, and you have a whole coterie of people doing various things. We just sat around, and then we had to drive people to this or to that.
Okay.
At one point, we had to drive the cars at least to Switzerland. So
Okay.
we left a bit late, actually, because the guy who came with us, so we had a couple of Lexus cars, fancy at the time, and we drove down to Dover and then across the ferry to Calais, and then the other guy had to get a flight from Geneva, and it's 1,000 kilometres, and he had to get there in 5 hours. So we went.
Crikey, Mr. Gundy.
So, yeah, that was
Down the Autobahn.
that was bad. Yeah,
Yeah.
terrible. Had to have the air conditioning on your hands just to.
So you did that before the ski instructing?
That was one of the periods between ski instructing.
Okay.
A winter travelling around Europe for a summer, another winter of sort of 5 or 6 months, and then the sort of chauffeur, another winter, and then I returned back to Australia after that.
Wow. So you did that. Were you permanently out of Australia for those 3 years, or did you? Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
I kind of got called back because my best friend had his wedding, so I had to go back
Yeah.
for that. And
Well, I mean, that sounds very independent, very entrepreneurial, really following the dream kind of thing, doing your own thing, making a bit of money, but also enjoying yourself.
yeah, it's more random than
But
structured, let's say. But yes.
yeah, but then looking through your LinkedIn CV, I see you ended up working for Deutsche Bank for 10 years, which is quite a different
What
thing. So
post?
maybe you can sort of let me know how that came about.
So I started off as an engineer, and engineers, I always figure, once an engineer, always an engineer. Engineers like to understand and fix things. And so that's been my sort of ethos forever. I worked post ski instructor. I did an MBA and then joined Macquarie Bank and worked in technology, investment banking, venture capital there for about 4 or 5 years, 5 years. While I was there, we figured out, I thought, okay, in banking, people understand returns, they understand money, but they don't really understand risk, at least on the corporate finance, corporate banking side. So I, studied quantitative finance masters while I was there. Then moved up to Singapore in 2004 and joined Deutsche Bank and ended up running a group called Methodology and Models that looks at all the kind of complex structured derivatives and products that Deutsche Bank puts out.
Mm-hmm.
That was for 8 years. But what you sort of find, right, in a sense, large organisations, some people are good with large organisations because they're, you end up with a role in an organisation and then you have to think about or not think about what is the purpose of the organisation, what are they trying to do, what is my role, and financial, I will call the financial industrial complex. It feels like there's a lot of people who are doing a job. They might not be completely comfortable about the whole outcome and purpose or how their firm is working, but they're paid pretty well, and so they continue to do their job, and they're generally good people. But the overall system, in a sense, is not necessarily optimal, right? There's this idea of, I think about, what can a business do? There's sort of three things in a sense. One, it can destroy value, that I guess FTX or something like that. You can transfer value or it can create value. Three exhaustive things in a sense. Transferring value comes from how do I actually get value from you, right? How do I get and mostly people don't want to give up value, they want to keep value. So you have to, I think there are perhaps two ways, coercion and deception. I either have to force you, pull a gun on you or have some sort of power position to take wealth from you, or I deceive you, right? Look over here and I take money over here. There's no risk in this product. So it felt in finance there's a lot of value transfer, and that's value transfer typically from the client to the institution, right? So and that also exists in asset management. There's a lot of value transfer that goes along, rather than actually creating value for the client. It's about
I would agree totally. After spending 15 years studying and researching the asset management industry,
I think it's a sort of
the end game was just to get it bigger,
grow your assets, and the interesting thing for asset management is it's all about money. In fact, the client's money, and the game is how much of that client's money can I get without losing the client, in a sense, right? And that's just almost 180 degrees misaligned with what the clients want. The clients want to end up with more money, not less money. And so, the question is, why does that dynamic exist in asset management?
Yeah. It really annoyed me actually when I was researching the hedge fund industry, because I always felt that the retail investor, i.e. mum and pop, are only allowed to invest in traditional asset management, long-only products, but couldn't go near a hedge fund with a barge pole, where actually from a risk-reward perspective, for mum and pop, hedge fund managers or hedge fund investments are so much more sensible. But they were used as a useful political football to be kicked around when there was a time of crisis, when the real spotlight should have been on politicians, bankers, the Fed. Anyway, before we get to zero hedge, but
no, that's
and it's a shame. So it's topsy turvy, right? And people know that. And maybe did you feel that in your industry people kind of knew that, and that?
No, I think so.
Or did it affect you when you were at Deutsche?
Well, at Deutsche was generally selling products to the wealthy, right? Family offices, other institutions. And even then you would expect that the other institutions and family offices are sort of at least technically equivalently equipped. They can understand. But it turns out a global, very large investment bank knows a lot more about the products and the risks than the clients they're selling to. And that sort of information asymmetry just was a bit unpleasant. We would have examples of structured products being sold. One was a client, a doctor that had a patent that had been worth $40 million, sold a particular laddered structured product and eliminated all of their wealth just through that. Right? So some associate director, not super senior person, had sold this product to a client who'd accumulated wealth through innovation, and it all just vanished.
Wow.
Because of this product, right? So, so that eventually, after a while, if you think too much, you don't like to be part of that. And so I was always in a group that tried to resist and sort of push back against these types of products. And eventually,
is this a kind of like
a lack of
legal
fit.
theft?
So it is deception.
Deception,
right? Is
that not theft?
It's in a sense theft. I mean, it's legal.
We're not messing around here. We're getting super controversial in the first 10 minutes.
You have a whole lot of lawyers and compliance people making sure that you stick within the rules, but within those rules, there's a lot of space to do things, right? And there's a lot of space to transfer value, right? So you're not necessarily transferring value through coercion, pulling a gun on people, or even necessarily illegal activity, but there's a lot of deception that happens in financial services because the money is there, right? Why did you rob the bank? Because the money is there, sort of thing. But also because the industry is an industry characterised by complexity and opacity, right? Complex products, things are moving. You make a decision now, but you only see the return in a day's time, a year's time, 10 years' time. It's opaque. There's a lot of information, but almost too much information, and you usually won't have the information you really need to make good decisions. So in that environment of complexity and opacity, deception becomes relatively easy. Do I sell you a product that will lead, that I can sell to you because of your fear or your greed? That's not necessarily a good product for you, but I can use those dynamics. And this type of industry just to sell these products. So so that happens, and that after a while you get a little bit jaded by that.
No, I mean, even though you're in a very complex area of banking compared to what most people are used to, I believe it is the same at the, when you walk into a local bank and you want to put, a few $1,000s into the mutual fund that's been recommended by your high street bank, mutual fund, unit trust, whatever you call it. It's the same thing, actually. Generally, the person who's selling it to you doesn't actually know either. But the bank does.
The bank does. And I think
it's a business model. So you had at some point, did this not agree with your value system, or how did you
eventually
make that?
Eventually, it's like
what happened? What was going on?
You get ejected from the organisation, right? So because you're just fighting too much the whole time.
Oh, you were fighting with them too much?
Yeah, because
you didn't play the politics.
I was a good organisational employee in terms of how do we upskill graduates, how do we get things aligned, but from top down, clearly it's very revenue driven. Clients are more inputs than clients, right? Organisations. There's a great management practitioner theorist called Peter Drucker, and his one of his key points was organisations should be all about customers. What's the point of an organisation, right? It's actually about creating and keeping and looking after customers. Financial services, not so much. Financial services are more about themselves and customers as an input, in a sense, right? So that's only fun for so long. After a while, it's tough to keep fighting that. And so then I said, well, okay, let's. And then I actually moved out of Deutsche Bank, joined a hedge fund for a while. We largely managed our own money at that point. And then I started Novicient, and the object there was to try to consciously build a business that put clients
When did
first.
you start? When did you launch Novicient? Yeah, what year was that?
2016.
2016,
so eight-ish years.
Okay, yeah.
So hard. Founding a company. Jesus.
Done it. You go from that. you go from that cushy salary.
That's right.
Right? That's paid every month.
Yep.
Even if you bugger off on a holiday for 3
Right.
weeks, you come back and there's the salary still there.
There's my desk, my
But
job.
as a new business, if you don't do anything for a few weeks, then the business doesn't do anything.
Yeah, correct.
So I get it. So okay, so how did you? Is courage the right word? How did you pluck up the courage to quit corporate life and launch your own business?
So I moved from large institution to small institution. So maybe that worked. So it was from Deutsche Bank to this hedge fund, Vulpes.
Yeah, Vulpes.
That used to be Artradis.
I know.
So
Remember
Artradis was
Steve Diggle was
yeah,
on the right side
famous.
of the trade during the 2008 financial
That's right,
crisis.
that's right.
Clever boy. Yeah.
So I worked there. So that was a smaller organisation, but still, I just got paid a salary, right? So, and then through that, while we were trying to do something, which was to almost work with, we were trying to build. So it was post the financial crisis. A lot of banks had shut down a lot of their trading. So a lot of good traders had been sort of sidelined, and we thought, okay, then maybe there's an opportunity to build a business, which we called kit trading, around giving these guys a place to go and giving them some infrastructure and capital support. And that'll sort of be based here in Singapore. But we didn't really have enough, we didn't find enough capital for that. And I think fundamentally it's difficult. Singapore has got good traders, but it's still a small country in a big world. So that was struggling, and at one point I thought actually a better way to do this would be to partner digitally with trading groups, hedge funds, traders all around the world, right? Because it's the internet, right? They can send you signals and strategies. They don't have to sit in the same room,
Yes.
right? That just opens up.
Yes.
So that was really Novician. But that was the firm, Novician. So, but what we did was, what I consciously did was, okay, let's try to focus on a really client-first business. So how do we structurally align ourselves with what Peter Drucker was saying, which is, a business should be all about its clients and putting its clients first, which is sits as a sort of little bubble within a big industry that is not doing that, and we
should be
trying to do
perfectly
that.
aligned.
Should be aligned, right? So
Yeah.
you need to think differently. So you need to have fee structures that. So again, value creation.
Yes.
We only get paid if we're creating value. So we're paid only, say, performance fees as a hedge fund, not management fees. So we're not focused on building the size of the fund. We're only focused on delivering performance, for which we sort of share a part of that. So that. And digitally, you can make everything very transparent. So you can allow clients to see, okay, this is my exposures, this is what I've got on, and that makes it a lot easier for. It actually enforces, in a sense, the alignment.
Yeah.
Because you can't hide things.
I think your idea is sound, and for me, there's a lot of smart people in your industry, and just to hear that, it's going to be very comforting, right?
Yeah,
without drilling down. But I'm interested also in.
Yeah.
The idea is sound, right? But what gave you the courage to? Because was there any fear, like it might not work, it might fail, or you wouldn't raise enough assets in time in order to pay the heating bill and all that kind of business? So I'm interested in what's going on there. The reason I ask is because I think so many people are in a cushy position, right? In a corporate job. It doesn't have to be finance. It could be tech or pharma or whatever. And as people get older, I think they realize their values a little bit more. And when what we do for a living is misaligned with our values, it creates a structural tension, which we can self-medicate with, booze, drugs, You
did that, right?
Materialism, yeah. Yeah, I mean, my story is a bit more complex, and we'll have to do another podcast on that. But yeah, to a certain extent, for sure, right? And so I'm interested in how do people make the switch? Because I've done it, you've done it, right? And how can we help other people? It's not that bad.
Oh, it is that bad.
Stop it.
No, I mean, Jensen Huang, NVIDIA, massively successfully. If people ask him, would you do it again? He would say no. So,
well, I don't like it.
I have no fear of anything, weirdly. So, fine. It doesn't mean it's not hard and tough and painful and you regret it, but I don't operate like I worry what will happen or what will people think or anything like that. It's really just quite rational, logically. Does this make sense? Can I construct it? And interestingly, it's almost a bit of a weird challenge, right? I always think of business a bit like a lot of flies buzzing around in a glass bottle, right? And there's a small exit to success. And most of the flies are buzzing around, bumping off the walls continually. And every so often one will fly out. And they say, hey, I'm a success, right? I'm a genius. I really thought that through. But they didn't, obviously. They were just lucky, right? They just luck versus skill. But I think you can actually be more structured and go back to first principles and think, okay, how can I really set this up to make it more likely to be successful and less likely to be successful? So that's just a kind of challenge.
So for you, was it just a question of getting the idea then? And once you had the idea, you didn't have the fear, so you could just go for it? Was there any sort of trepidation or any?
Trepidation, no.
No. Wow.
Sorry.
That's pretty cool.
Doesn't mean it wasn't hard
or
painful, or it continues to be hard and painful, but not.
What do you mean by hard and painful? Is that doing stuff you don't like?
Yeah, clearly doing stuff you don't like, right? Because I would like to do stuff that is intellectual and thinking, and I have to do stuff that is people-oriented and
compliance
getting
related
stuff done. Not so much compliance.
Really?
We have a way to solve compliance, but yeah, stuff.
It's called hiring a compliance officer, probably.
Have to do. Well, that would be another podcast. But we have. I'll just throw this in. We can. Compliance is one of those things that the financial industrial complex wants to avoid, minimise, bypass, fix after the fact. It's an obstacle.
They claim it stifles innovation, but the reality is it stifles their ability for more deception.
Yeah, for more deception and for more revenue generation.
And obviously governments are trying to protect people with the compliance, but it's like the horse is already bolted, mate. Yeah,
because their orientation is not towards customers, right? Their orientation is towards themselves, and then the regulators have to come in and say, well, actually, we have to look after customers. Yeah. But the point here, quickly, is I think the whole approach is wrong. Also, in that it's about how do I reduce, minimise, avoid deal with these regulations. And they do it through a very human intermediated approach, right? You hire compliance consultants and you write compliance manuals and get people to have checklists and do training, and it's hopeless and it never really works, and nobody reads the manuals, and then governments keep changing regulations. It's just a giant expensive mess that doesn't really achieve things.
100% agreed.
What we want to do actually is move from human intermediated to actually digitise. So we'll actually have a sort of AI way to reduce all of the rules and regulations to requirements, obligations, machine-readable obligations, which we then link to our processes, documented and automated processes, which put out deliverables that can allow us to move to a situation of automated and continuous compliance.
Yeah, that sounds smart. So we can remove the human error. So anyway, difficult jobs are not compliance, but what?
So
what was the hardest part of setting up your own business?
I guess the challenge is you no longer have support, right? So everything is you, and then along the way you have ongoing. Clearly, you have to figure out how to fund the business, how to stay cash flow.
Did you realise that not having support would be an issue before you started it?
Not really, no.
Yeah.
Not really, no. But, in others, where is the IT department or
that I can shout
how
at.
How do you do payroll?
I think a lot of people who come out of banking and set up their own businesses, consultancy business, asset management, setting up funds and stuff, have no clue that they're going to be changing their own light bulbs and buying toilet paper and stuff. It's quite amazing. And even for me, in a very small, health and fitness business with a small number of very specialist clients, the amount of work on scheduling is ridiculous. And I remember going into like the surgery and they'd, why have they got 3 receptionists all on scheduling? Woo, it's a ridiculous amount of work. You have no idea.
Well, in a sense, what our business is built to address that in a sense, right? Because there are there's this trading talent, right? Hedge fund talent scattered around the world. And they less and less have the traditional options of proprietary trading in banks or even the big hedge funds. It's getting harder. So they end up sort of on their own. They have the talent, but they can't, let's say, manifest their skills, because if they wanted to set up, particularly in an increasingly sort of regulated environment, set up their own hedge fund, it is exactly that, right? All the costs and complexity and management and the compliance and the marketing, the operations and the broker relationships, and everything becomes, the dominating thing. So if you are a small hedge fund running $100 million, you're just dying from costs and time. You spend most of your time raising capital, managing operations, dealing with people and providers, and just a little bit of your time on actual trading, right?
Which is what you love and what you're good at,
Which is what they should be focusing on. And the environment, the industry, hedge fund industry, in a sense, seems to have not progressed much from this sort of cottage industry of each hedge fund has to do everything to more of a platform which allows these talented managers and traders to focus on what they're good at, and then they can offload a lot of the infrastructure and operations and issues through central platforms, and that's in a sense us.
No, I think it's badly what's needed in the industry. And I remember when I started, 20 years ago, you could set up a hedge fund in Singapore without much money, just a couple of $2 million. I remember counting in our database, we had like 15 or something, which started with $1 million, and some of them went on to be over $1 billion, like Quant Edge, started with a few bucks,
$3-4 billion,
very successful. Don't know what Atrada started out with, but it was probably quite small.
Well, Atrada started out promises of 50 million, and
but when they actually launched,
actual money of 4 million.
4 million, yeah. So so amazing, right? So you couldn't do that these days, and I felt it was, it just becomes so institutionalized, like with these huge funds, and they almost become like a traditional asset management house because there's limited options for where they can allocate. So it's really nice to see, funds, investors like yourself that can allocate to these, and look after the small guys, because that's where the best ideas are.
That's where the best ideas, best returns. It's the creatives. It's a little bit,
and just need to diversify the risk a little bit. But rather than us going in individually.
Correct. I mean, it's a little bit. We think it's a little bit like Hollywood, right? Hollywood is massive studios who control distribution. They produce, goodish movies, but they're not movies you remember, right? All of the movies that they produce tend to merge into.
I don't think they're very good anymore.
Can't remember. And then the independent studios, where the interesting auteurs and talent, they are just squeezed out. So what
everything's going this way. The music industry is the same. I mean,
right,
Singapore again 20 years ago, you had some pretty decent bands used to come here.
Australia
I remember
as well.
Morrissey came, Asian Dub Foundation. I think there was Skunk Anansi. Quite a lot of cool, Deftones. Quite a lot of good bands. Now it's like Coldplay 6 days. Taylor Swift 6 days. I mean, and then you can't even get tickets anyway. It's just it's like if you're huge, you become huger, but if you're small, you ain't going anywhere.
Yeah,
a shame really.
So that's right. So in a sense, how do we give customers really more what they want? And the way the way we do it is technology, right? You just have to figure out a way to strip out costs and to restructure things such that you can let these smaller, independent creatives do what they're good at.
No, it's a brilliant idea, and I really like what you're doing. So, but what about, what did you find the most mentally challenging thing, or physically, mentally, emotionally? What do you struggle with the most? I'm looking to see if you have challenges which other people think, yeah, but I got these challenges. Scott might. Actually, he probably does. And and how did you overcome them?
Balance is hard, right? Because it becomes a bit dominating of your whole life.
Balance between the business and your life.
Yeah, correct.
Okay, it's a classic.
Health,
Yeah.
Fitness.
So what was happening?
Nutrition.
Oh, obviously you worked with us on some personal training and executive coaching, but before that, what was going on? Or not going on?
Not going. Yeah. No. So I mean, because it becomes, founding a firm, entrepreneurial activity, it sort of dominates your life, right? There's always about 20 things that you can do, and you've only got time for 3 or 4, right? So there's always more things. It's not that you can say, right, now I can relax, because you can never relax, which means you then don't prioritise properly health, which means which is bad, right? Because you can talk more about this than I can, but your endorphins sort of disappear, and you lose your motivation and energy and health. Friends fade off into the distance a little bit. So eating, I think somebody has talked about the founder 15, right? Which is founders put on about 15 kilograms over their life.
Yeah.
Over the sort of founder's journey.
Yeah.
So you need to sort of counteract that, right? So working with Levitas, 2 things. One was working with Shivani on the executive coaching, which just gave me a sounding board to sort of talk about things and get a bit of perspective that you otherwise don't get. Because the founder is the founder, right? The founder is alone, right? They'll have advisors, they'll have staff.
Yeah.
But there's and you can talk to other founders a little bit, but they're pretty much.
Yeah, Nick Johnson
alone.
writes about this in his book,
Right.
Executive Loneliness.
Okay,
Yeah.
right, yeah.
I remember, and I think I'm sort of confessing myself a little bit, but when I was a CEO of Eureka Hedge, didn't often have people to talk to.
Yeah.
And then end up talking to my staff, maybe over drinks, inappropriately, right? Because it was maybe privy to conversations at a higher level, which they shouldn't have been, because I didn't have anyone else to talk to.
Right.
And I like to drink.
That's right. But it's also,
so I get it,
that's the authenticity issue, right? You can be, sure, you must, in theory, be authentic, right? But you can't be completely authentic because everyone might run away, because if they really understood, the challenges and the startups and entrepreneurial activities and firms, they're risky ventures, but you need to somehow not let anybody fully know.
No, so you have to be quite smart about what information. Yeah, I remember when I left, and then a year later, one of my ex-staff, he was in a promoted to a more senior position and got access to the P&L, and he always used to complain, why aren't we doing this and this? And then he messaged me on LinkedIn, I can see what you were struggling with now, Alex. I was like, I felt really good, a little bit of empathy.
That's right. That's right. No, it's but I do wonder, in general, I think intuitively, full openness and transparency, but apparently cannot.
Yeah, I was probably too much, but I want to be. You want to be. But
you want to be people to be part of it, and in theory, if they understand it a little better, they can probably help a little better. But you also don't want to have them running away.
Yeah,
scared.
Yeah. We've got 2 weeks, so we're turning the lights off if we don't raise X amount of money.
I've got some plans. Okay, what are all your CVs doing on the printer?
So going back to you, so you're struggling with the health, or making good choices over food and exercise.
So no, exercise no good, right? So, but
how did things change then?
So again, Levitas, just a regular session or a couple of sessions each week just gets you going, right? It gives you some structure. So it's a little bit
on the personal training side of things.
Personal training side, with Elise, because it's a little bit like you might have been doing a lot of running on your own, say, for 6 months, and you're running 3 times a week, and everything's going well, and then you'll go on holiday for a week, and you'll get busy with work for a week, and suddenly you haven't run for 2 or 3 weeks, and then it's gone. It's like you've never run, and you never pick it up again, and so that whole 6 months is sort of vanishes. So you somehow need a bit of structure to force you into that, but ideally structure that forces you into exercise that's constructive exercise that is valuable for. Because what I also learned as part of working with Elise is, as you get generally, but also in particular as you get older, we just do very bad things to our bodies just in terms of sitting down and not exercising and not stretching and not there's and so I feel now I'm better, stronger, fitter than 20 years ago.
Oh, that's awesome! Better than 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, I must admit I feel much better than I did when I was much younger as well. But I literally did nothing. But you always were a bit sporty.
Yeah.
But that's because I do remember when you came to see us. I'm sure you won't mind me saying you were strong but quite stiff.
Very stiff. Basically completely inflexible.
Yeah. So you had one bit. Definitely, I'm a big fan of strength, but not maybe quite in.
Yeah. Yeah. So it needs to be balanced as well. Yeah. And the other one is not directly, but through, I think, your feeds and comments and posts just on nutrition. Nutrition also fundamentally important. Just eating the right things. So and it seems to be a weirdly complicated place that the world doesn't seem to understand in any depth at all. So I can constantly
it's a total disaster.
Misinformed, but also we again have these sort of adversarial groups like the consumer food companies.
Yeah.
giving us bad information all the time, right?
Yeah.
It's So trying to get that sort of balance around food, a structure around exercise, and a sort of perspective with Shivani in terms of how do I think about running an organisation and what are the issues. She'd always try to lead me towards the feeling side, and I'm always trying to lead her back towards what about this business situation I have? What do you think about that?
Yeah.
but
it
was valuable.
You get it though, right? You get it. Some people find it difficult to go there, but generally it's I've done a lot of work on that myself, so it's the emotional triggers that force you down certain paths. I struggle with the structure, and that's based on my history.
The structure of the
structural type things,
right?
Like forecasting, and that sort of, But so that's the work I've done, and so what were the things that you struggled with mostly? I think you mentioned prioritisation and the fact that there's 20 things that you could be doing, and you can only focus on 3 or 4.
Yeah,
and what how's your framework changed or your mindset changed?
I think you figure there's probably some entrepreneurs out there who have it all together, right? And they're doing their exercise and they're eating properly and they're organising their teams well and they're
Branson, for
doing
example,
stuff they shouldn't do. But I think they're mostly mythical. I don't think they exist. No. I think everybody is. Yeah. Everybody is fighting, right? Everybody is struggling. It's very few people, and if they,
but maybe struggling to different degrees, putting a positive spin on things.
Yeah, no, clearly people can struggle completely into a vicious downward cycle and finish up. But I think mentally, I presume it's a bit like when somebody's angry, road rage in a car type of thing, but then you have to sort of step back and think, well, maybe there is a real reason that just today they had this particular issue and they're in this state of mind and have some empathy for them, right? So
that's a really nice way of looking at things. I try to be more like that.
They call it the sort of pin thing, where somebody did something that you didn't like. But quite possibly there was somebody that'd been pricked by a pin for some reason. Yeah, and there's a whole bunch of
that, SHIT right? in there that was ready to come out.
So that empathy thing is valuable.
Yeah. So let's say I'm sure a lot of our listeners that are watching this would love to leave corporate life and set up their own businesses, but maybe are struggling to do so. Do you have like advice or something you could? What would you say to them?
I think it's in general a good. Okay, in general it's good, right? Be a bit more in control of your own destiny. You a lot of the vigor coming from within a country comes from smaller firms. So generally it's a good thing. You want to where you can be clear about what the pain points and issues are. So you ideally want to set yourself up properly in terms of funding, and people around you should understand the expectations, which we can do better or worse. You also probably need some helpers, advisors, because when you're in it, if people have gone through it before, they'll know things that you just won't know until afterwards. So having some seasoned advisors is always super helpful. I've always had lots of advisors, too many advisors, actually. But they give you a sort of perspective. Then you have to sort of think through and decide which advice you want to take. It is still painful, right? Did I mention before? I mentioned before Jensen Huang in the video who said he wouldn't start it again, right? He wouldn't do it again, even though he must be worth tens and tens of billions right now. You probably want to do it a bit younger than earlier than later if you can, but not necessarily. But it's easier if you don't have a family with children and this sort of financial overlay to handle, right? That just makes it extra hard. That's all I've got on that. I mean, I did it, but I didn't really think about the process of doing it.
I did the same as well. I mean, if I roll back the clock, I would definitely do it all over again, slightly differently. Yep. I wouldn't have spent so much money on the reno on the first office I rented. I wasted a whole bunch of cash on that one and got screwed on it. But I learned from that, right? There was a valuable lesson there. So
I mean, I always think.
But I did hire a health and fitness business coach on day one,
right?
To help me understand bits of the business I didn't understand, which was a lot of it, and to see my blind spots, really. So I think some kind of coach who can help you see that is absolutely essential, and provide you with some support and accountability, and to ease the loneliness a little bit, right, that we talked about.
Yep.
Yeah.
I lost my point.
But and I was thinking, well, you said, you would do it younger without a family, and obviously I had a family when I set up Levitize, and I thought of the same. What happens if I lose all my money and it all goes horribly wrong? And I thought, well, worst case scenario, I can go home to mum and dad back in the UK. I can send my son to the free local school. My wife doesn't work anyway, so she'd be fine. She might have to learn to drive a car in the countryside in order to get around. And, I can, binge watch Premiership football with my mum while looking for a new job. And I thought, is that so bad? And I was thinking, what would my friends disown me because I did that? Of course not. My family, of course. It's like,
no, that's right. I think it's...
And so it's like, it's not such a big deal. And the people who might look down on me, I said, I told you so, or it's not going to work. Do you really want to be hanging out with these people anyway? Yeah,
I mean, and those people would be people on that traditional career path thing, right? And I think the traditional career path thing is going away anyway, right? Careers are increasingly very disjointed. You go up, you go down, you move across.
The tech industry has just discovered this, right? Yeah.
And the downside, I guess one question is, if you have a fallback, then are you really committed?
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah.
If you really face a downside and loss of money, and then you're arguably more motivated to make it successful.
Depending on if your motivation is fear of failure or something, depending on what it is. But yeah, that's a really excellent point. I've actually discussed that with one of my coaches as well, on that exact point that I talked about. So,
and then the other part to that is, but maybe you're pushing down the path of something that ultimately is not going to be successful anyway.
Yes.
So in others, how do you make a stop decision anyway, right?
Yes.
Because you don't want to be so bloody minded that you just waste 5 years or, an additional 5 years on something that objectively is never going to work, right?
Yeah. That's good.
There's challenges. But it's hard, but ultimately rewarding. So it depends on you, the person, right? Do you want to? There are a lot of people who are just happy doing a job, right? They just want to go home.
Yes.
And then have their holidays.
Yeah. And that's fine.
Paid.
But it's recognizing if you're in the wrong place.
Yeah.
And you feel, and if the only hardship is that maybe you can no longer take business class flights and you have to go economy, and maybe you have to downgrade your, Maserati to a BMW, and is that really a hardship, right?
Right.
These are first world problems. And of course, logically, people know that, but the ego and everything is tied up so much in it, it can be quite difficult. But actually, you're just going to be so much happier, right? So much happier.
Mostly.
Yeah. Right.
Mostly happier. No, it is. Clearly, you and it's also, you have these up and down things, right? Your challenges.
Yeah.
Oh my God, where am I get the money? Oh no, I'm good, fine. Oh no, my God, I'm good. And after the challenge is over, then it's like, oh yeah, fine, no problem. At the time, though, not as much fun. Sorry, I need to be more positive. No, entrepreneurial is a good. It's constructive.
Yeah.
Industry-wise, it's constructive. It's valuable for everything. It's valuable probably for you. It can be sort of painful. I mean, I think there's graduations, right? You can be an employee in a very large firm, or you can be a founder of a small firm, or you can be an employee of a small firm, which is in a sense you're taking some risk, but trying to do something that's a bit more perhaps aligned with your
I think small
right?
firm could be a good intermediate stopgap.
Yeah.
I think that's a very good. You learn a lot more in a small firm. It's more hands-on, more fun, less politics, less BS, less paperwork, compliance manuals, HR manuals, etc.
Yeah. You can see.
But I think it's important that everyone should work in a big institution so they can appreciate.
It's valuable at the start. There's also training and stuff in big institutions, right? You learn things. They have structured training programs because they sort of have to. They bring a lot of people in.
Are they any good?
The training programs, no, they're okay. They're okay. They teach you some stuff, some things. Yeah. But and you sort of understand how things ought to be, sort of in theory, ought to be done. How do you deal with people and processes and stuff like that. So you get a sort of certain perspective. Whereas otherwise in startups, you're kind of making a lot of it up.
Yeah, I think it's a really good takeaway message that we've come to for our listeners that, if you are thinking of jumping ship, then going to a small firm could be the sort of best risk.
Yeah, I think
risk reward sort of option.
In a holistic sense, right?
Yeah.
Particularly if you can find a firm
get something that's more aligned with your values. Yes, the salary might be lower, but it's just going to be better. Yeah. And if you look at those, there's a lot of papers where they talk about, how much more money do you need to continue doing a job you don't like right. to get like one small notch up the happiness ladder, and it's literally you've got to add another few 100,000 on, and you go like this much.
Yes. Yeah. No, agreed. Yeah. And then you spend it anyway, right? I mean, one of the good things of
and then you spend it, you feel great for a minute, and then it's gone.
Yep.
But it doesn't actually permanently fill up your dopamine bucket like exercise does, or it's just a temporary, just like a drug.
Yeah, no, it's like looking at some of the car parks from some of the big investment banks, and you say there are way too many Porsches and Ferraris and stuff coming out of that car park. That's just not a good and balanced thing. But also,
exactly.
In a sense, it's wasted money a bit, right?
Well, exactly. I remember speaking to my ex-boss about it, who could have easily afforded several of those cars, and I said, how come you don't have a Ferrari? It's like, What a waste of money, Alex. Stupid question. That was it. Conversation over. Like, yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna end up with some quick fire questions. I've got 3 quick fire questions.
Okay.
Okay. First question. Who is responsible for climate change? A, the people. B, the politicians. C, the cows.
Okay. It is the people. No,
Okay.
no, it's a system, right? Politicians are part of a system. We're all part of that system. Yeah, the cows, right? But the cows. We have so many cows because people like to eat beef and stuff, right?
So my next question, in response to that, who is going to save the world? A, Elon Musk. B, the Rothschilds. C, Tom Cruise.
Who's going to save the world?
Yeah. Elon Musk, the Rothschilds, Tom Cruise.
Well, it's not Elon Musk. Let's start with that. Rothschild, just because they are wealthy. Is there any particular reason for Rothschilds?
No, it was just a kind of
Something in the middle.
Yeah, because
or Tom Cruise. Yeah, I put my money on Tom Cruise.
yeah,
He's
I think it's the right answer.
I'll leave the Scientology thing aside, but
Yeah,
generally,
exactly.
Tom Cruise.
And then I'm going to ask this question to everyone. So obviously you're the first one I'm asking it to. What are your top 3 health and fitness tips for our listeners? And it can be anything around mental health, wellness, health, fitness, physical health, whatever you like. Yeah.
So structured exercise, just build it into a routine somehow.
Okay.
Just fundamental. Another one would be turmeric.
Okay. Turmeric, yeah, it's a super anti-inflammatory.
Super anti-inflammatory, particularly as you get older. Everything
Yeah.
kind of starts and you can either try to take anti-inflammatories, which really work, but I think turmeric is a sort of natural. You can take as much as you want. It doesn't. In others, you can't take.
Yeah, I think everything has limits, but it is a great anti-inflammatory. Yeah.
So, I think the other one is, I have hockey as it becomes a sort of community for me, right? So you have family, you have work, and then a sort of a sporty third family in a sense, right? So in my sense, Singapore Cricket Club, hockey is that. So that gives you both sort of sport exercise, but also mental.
Yeah, I quite agree. This is why I got my son into rugby, because I like the community around it and the supportive structure, along with obviously the physical exercise.
Yeah.
Awesome. That is brilliant. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time, Scott. That was really fun. Really enjoyed it.
Same here.
Okay. All the best. All the best to your business.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
You
cheers.
too.